Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
I really expected a little more than that. But after you hear the talk, you may think that was more than what it should have been. Anyway, my name is Burns Brady, and I'm an alcoholic. It's really good to be here. As the years have gone by, I've become increasingly aware of how special each of these IDAA meetings has become. Pretty much gone through the whole evolution of just the excitement of getting here, and then all of the stuff of listening to the presentations, and then gradually talking to more and more people as it went along, and then it changed from just being something really exciting to something becoming special, and now it becomes an integral part of my life. And I'm beginning to having to live in the day, because the loss of this is coming ever so much closer for me. And this is one of the main things that I will really miss. Whatever goes on after all this is over, I'm not sure. I'm a total agnostic about what goes on about after I'm dead, but maybe I'll get a chance to stand up there or whatever we do up there and look down and watch this and rejoice in it as much as I do when I'm here. But it's become increasingly special, almost precious to be here. With LeClaire's memorial, I'm made aware of how no one is irreplaceable. It's been my experience to observe when one of us goes down, someone is always supplied because they're in training. And our job is to train them as I was trained, and then when it's time to change, we change. There's never a break in the line of Alcoholics Anonymous. We just appear and do our job, and that's what'll happen. It'll happen with me. It'll happen with a lot of the people around here. There are so many people that I miss today, and so many people I've come to know for the first time, and so many of you young ones that I began to watch, as Chuck talked about last night, the red dots. The red dots, y'all will be the future of IDAA and AA, and y'all are the most special person in the room, but you wouldn't be shit without us. I just want to let you know that. You see, that's the way it works. Last night, Hannah mentioned Sandy Beach, and I will remind me and y'all and the red dots, thank God you're here, of what Sandy used to say. First time I ever went to, he was one of my great heroes. He will always be listed in my book as probably the best AA speaker who ever lived, but that's just for me. And still is one of the top-notch speakers in AA. But at some meeting, probably at CCAD, he was addressing a group at least this big, if not larger, and he said, "I'm going to tell you before I start, there's only two things you got to do to stay sober." And I'm thinking, oh God, I got to get this down. You know, I mean, almost that way, because this was in the first 3 years of my sobriety, and if it even remotely made sense, I wrote it down to take it home. He said, only two things you got to do to stay sober. One is don't drink, and the other is change everything else you're doing. And I remember he said, half measures truly will avail you nothing. Well, I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, half measured. I understood I got to do the drill. I really didn't know what the drill was. As you'll hear in my story as it unfolds, no one was teaching me the true drill that I've come to know today. A lot of fellowship, very little big book or the steps and those kind of things. So I really didn't know what full measures were, except to go to meetings. But I finally ran across what I think is the best example of half measure. And I'd forgotten this joke for years until somebody reminded me of it. And for the last year, I've been telling it over and over again. Anywhere I can find somebody to listen, I'll tell them this joke. First of all, it's funny as hell. And second of all, it does tell you a great deal about half measure. This guy got sober. He was a traveling salesman. Had to go into treatment. He was out 4, 5, 6 months, however long it was. He got back home. He got into his aftercare. He got into everything that was going on. He got into AA. Everything was going ready, and he was going cool, and he was ready to go back to work. So we went to start on his circuit. He would ride for 5 days, come home for the weekend, ride for 5 days, come home for the weekend. And this particular day he took off. It was on Monday. He got to that first hotel. He checked in. They said, "Oh, it's good to see you back." They all hugged. I mean, it was just crying. It was wonderful. So he went up and opened the door and checked in. He'd been going there for years, and sure enough, there they were ready for him. They had two good-looking naked women sitting on the foot of the bed. And right in the middle of the table was a big fifth of whiskey. And he looked at those women, and he stood there a minute, and he kind of glanced heavenward. Finally, he said, "I've quit drinking, and I've got to change everything I'm doing, so I can't drink that whiskey. And one of you girls is going to have to leave." That's older than hell, but I love that joke because it tells me my daily conflict about what to do. What is God's will? Remember the show Animal House? Remember that wonderful movie where she's laying on the bed and she's drunk, and this guy's in there and he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do with her, and she's drunk. He's got the devil on one shoulder and God on the other, and God's saying, just pick her up and take her in the car and take her on back to her dorm. And the other was saying, screw her, take her home. I love that. It is my life. 1 minute at a time. Am I going to screw it, or am I going to take it home? Okay. You've asked me to come tell you my story, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. As I go through this story, what you'll hear repeatedly are references to the big book. I do not think I'm a big book lawyer. I don't look for loopholes. I don't try to tell you or try not to tell you what you're supposed to do with it. But I am a big book thumper. I live by the AA mantra, or the rosary, as I call it, the AA rosary of what's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only way I can keep my brain between the curbs with God's grace and the spiritual discipline that goes on or comes from that book. So you will hear it repeatedly. If you have a problem with the book, that's fine with me. I really, it is not my problem, whatever your problem may be. I'll help you with my experience, strength, and hope if you choose to ask me. At the same time, what I will tell you, you'll hear a lot about the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous. I spent 10 years in this program, never read the book, never did the steps, going to 5 meetings a week and talking to my sponsor 4 or 5 times a day, never ever considered taking a drink, pissed for 2 years because I didn't have the choice. And I really didn't, because I would die if I drank, and I believed that. So I was 10 years sober, 10 years without a drink. Mr. Dr. AA in Louisville, Kentucky had put on an IDAA conference with Gordy, and I didn't have enough sense to blow poop out of a spoon. It was absolutely, I was insane. I was a lethal weapon for God. And anywhere that I went, here he comes, just either take a drink, because he's going to drag your ass off to treatment anyway, and then when you get out, he's going to tell you exactly what you got to do to stay sober, and it's his way or the highway, and that's it. And I deal with that demon today, but thank God I deal with it with a higher power that I really do feel functioning in my life, and with a game plan for living or a design for living that enables me to deal with me on a daily basis. And that's what this whole thing's about, as I've come to know it up to today. I grew up in a little town in western Kentucky named Mayfield. I grew up in a home where there was no alcohol and no drugs. That's Mayfield, Kentucky. 12,500 people. There was no alcohol in my home, but my mom's dad, my grandfather, Burns Crossland, died drinking bleach in the Mayfield City Jail in 1934. He was the town drunk. My mother grew up with all the shame and the rage and all of the feelings of inadequacy in that small Bible Belt town as the daughter of the town drunk. She dragged that entire disease into our home. Now, I need to tell you, I adored my mother. I absolutely worshiped my mother, dead and alive. She died in 1978. I think of her daily. I thought of her daily virtually my whole life with very good feelings. But my mother was goofy. My mother was she was what today would be known as an adult child. Now, whether you have a problem with that concept or not, it's just something you'll have to work out. But in the first page of the family afterward, what it says, if you're around one of us, you get neurotic. And my mama was neurotic. Great lady. I have the same firebrand impulsivity that she has and the same creativity, but I also have the downside to that, and that is the significant emotional instability and the complete need for approval that this program has given me the tools to deal with. And most of that early part of my life in seeking that approval came out of the first place I learned about conditional love was in my home. My mother living vicariously through me, I had to be perfect. Now, this was never written down, read, and defined. It was just part of the way we read and played the script. I wouldn't have changed my home with anybody. I even thought about it as a senior in high school. Would I change my home with anybody else? I didn't think so then. I don't think so today. As homes go, I came up in a home which was probably about as functional and about as loving as any place I've ever been. But I got to tell you, Mama was goofy. And Mama, living through me, I quickly learned a whole bunch of principles that would direct and dictate my life for the rest of my life. One is you give them everything they want, and they'll take care of you and make you feel special. That was not only women, that was the world in general, but especially for women. So you can well imagine how my relationships have been most of my life. You give them everything they want, and the other part of that equation is they'll take care of you and make you feel special. When it expands into the entire life cycle that I've lived and still do, it is very crippling. You may know it as codependency. I just know it. Be perfect. Give them what they want. They'll take care of you and make you feel special. AA, when I got into with y'all, it took me a number of years to realize, number one, you said I couldn't be perfect. Number two, I didn't have to be perfect. And number three, you'd give me a set of rules to live by that would not make perfection necessary. I would almost pay you money to put my picture in anything where somebody would see it. I would almost pay you money to put my name somewhere. Praise God today, that isn't critical. I don't know it's whether I've had my picture in enough papers or whether I've really grown up enough spiritually. Whatever it may be, it isn't the driving force in my life today. But as I have reflected through the 12-step inventories, etc., my life was motivated by getting my picture where you could see it, and by your giving me an A, that meant I was okay. It was a real crazy life. The second place I learned about conditional love was in the church. Now, let me tell you about my relationship with the church is. I grew up in a church where I had medals for 12 years that I never missed Sunday school and church. And when I crashed and burned, my best friend was an Episcopal priest. We played golf together. We drank beer together. We were really tight. And when I came home from treatment, I said to Jimmy, we were sitting holding hands like that, and I said, would you take me back to my church? He said, I can do that, Burns, but you've got to go to AA. They have better success with alcoholics than we do. Now, I'd already learned that in 3 months of treatment, but here's a man with a collar on, and if you study Bill Wilson's life, what I can relate to in his life is how much he revered men of the cloth. And I'm absolutely certain if our thinking was correct, and I'm just extrapolating this and imagining or projecting, I felt they had something that I didn't have, and maybe it either rub off on me or they could teach it to me. And I know that's what Wilson thought for many years, maybe up to the time of his death, is he ran real tight with men of the cloth. Well, so did I. Well, Jimmy was real. He said, must go to AA. They have better success with alcoholics than we do. But I spent 8.5 years reading the chalice, reading the lay reader and administering the chalice and the host in the Episcopal Church. At the end of 8, in addition to going to 5 meetings a week, seeing a psychiatrist and doing all the other things that I was doing, that we all get into, you know, that's what we do. Moderation is not our word to begin with. And, you know, the book is beautiful in reading the family afterward, the 2 directions we take in: go back to work and make $1 zillion and get everything back, or stand over in the corner with our hair shirt on screaming Jesus. You know, we're going to do one of the 2, and that's just the way it goes. Well, I was about halfway in between and didn't know whether I was fish or fowl. But anyway, I thought I did look good in the robe. That's what really appealed to me. I craved wearing a mitre. I even gave it some thought to come in here today. But anyway, we sat down at 8.5 years, and it was my minister, it was my sponsor, and we prayed what would be my ministry. You know, we call it service, but any way you cut it, it's a ministry. At least that's what it appears to me to be, and I know that's what it is for me. I told him, I said, I'll go to seminary if that's what you want me to do, but dear God, I don't want to go to seminary. I can't think of anything worse on God's earth than going to seminary, but I'll do it if that's what you think that I ought to do. They said, no, we think your service and your ministry will be in AA. And so I cut back on trying to be 10 feet tall in the church and trying to be 10 feet tall in AA, and just continued to try to be 12 feet tall in AA, and that's the way it came out. And I mean, that's just, it's not all or none, it's 180% or none, you know? And just think about all of us compulsive children in this room. I'm not talking about the ones at Al-Anon and Alateen, I'm talking ones in AA and Alateen or Alatot. I'm talking about the ones in AA and Al-Anon, hyperactive children. Even in Al-Anon, you're hyperactive. Hell, you had to run that fast to catch us. Just think about it. And don't think for one friggin' minute you weren't getting after us. Oh, you sure as hell were. If I was in Al-Anon, I'd have chased one of us because we're exciting as hell. You know, that's just what we are. I mean, no shit. You know, why don't you jump off that 100-foot cliff? Well, it was there. You know what I mean? God, that sounds great. Let me go too. But I learned about conditional love in the church. I learned about conditional love in my family. So the 2 most predominant influences in my life were conditional love. I had a real conflict with the church because what the church says, you either believe this or you go to hell. I mean, there was no ambiguity. You believe this or you go to hell. And I wanted to believe that, and I didn't really have that big a problem with believing that concept. What I had a problem with was my behavior that as a 12-year-old I was getting into. You know, I would go to Sunday school and they'd say it's better to spill your seeds in the belly of a whore than on the ground. And as a 12-year-old, I'm having a real conflict because I've just now found me a new pull toy, and man, I'm in conflict with God's grace on a daily basis. I mean, that's not cheap humor. The women are all going, huh? And the guys are going, yeah. Wish you wouldn't talk about that. You know. Yeah. But I mean, that's what it was. So I'd do what 12-year-olds do. I'd go to altar call on Sunday. They would take me down, baptize me on Sunday night. I've been baptized more than most of you have had water to drink. Thank God. Because, I mean, that was the only way that particular denomination could deal with confession. We didn't have confession. We had baptism. And at least in my church, we did it over and over and over. It's kind of like a revolving wheel of sin and baptism, which is great. I'm all for it. As many times I got baptized, Jim, I should have had some sort of a scuba suit. It would have made breathing a little easier. No, I'm sorry about that. I'll back down. It got away from me there for a minute. Anyway. So that's you know, that's how I grew up in this conditional love. Now, that didn't make me an alcoholic. I need to be real clear what I come to know about me and being an alcoholic. That didn't make me an alcoholic. But I'll tell you what I was taught early on. If you stop the drinking and don't deal with the thinking, you go back to the drinking. Wilson even called it the peculiar mental twist, which was that peculiar slant that we will go through all the gyrations and rationalizations to get back to get the relief, because we start off playing a quart low. We've spent a great deal of time in this conference and many, many conferences talking about downregulation and upregulation of vital neurochemical neuropharmacology in the alcoholic. We, of all people, should understand what irritable, restless, and discontented means. We, of all people, should understand why we drink or drug for the effect. We're living in a world, at least I lived in a world, which was too damn loud. The noise that most people would hear would be, I heard, ah! I didn't know it till I took my first amphetamine and the whole world got quiet. And I thought, damn. I didn't know that there was noise to begin with. But in that peculiar mental twist, if I'm not in fit spiritual condition, then I'm going to find relief, and I'm going to find it wherever I find it. I pray to God that I maintain my spiritual condition on a daily basis so that I don't have to get it through work, through sex, through some rationalization that ends up in pills or alcohol. And I will, because that's what I am. And I know that it will work because it's worked before. Now, what makes me an alcoholic is I was born with half of me in the shade. Not a dark side. I just don't hear and feel and see like normal people. Except when I drink and drug, and when it worked, it was my medicine, and the world was flat, and the sky was blue, and the sun was yellow, and life was wonderful. And then my medicine quit working. Then I had to quit taking my medicine, and I was left with the same problem and no medicine. And getting in this program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was given everything I need to be given: a fellowship, a home group, a sponsor, the big book, the steps. You want to know what the 5 components of Alcoholics Anonymous is? You can say, well, that's Burns Brady's opinion. No, by God, that's what it is. I'm just summarizing it for you. That's what it is. And this enables me to deal with the irritable, restless, and discontented. And there are studies out the yin-yang. Pharmacological, sociological, behavioral, they're all there. Watch us in this room together. You're watching a bunch of hyperactive kids that are scared to death that the plane won't leave this afternoon on time or we'll miss it. You know? Oh, hell, the other night we had to get back from Jackson, Mississippi to Louisville, and the plane didn't take off at 4:30, and I want you to know I went through more gyrations to get a damn plane to get home, and finally ended up at home at 4:30 in the morning, when if I'd have just stayed in Jackson, Mississippi, we'd got a good night's sleep, got on the plane the next morning, been home fine. But hell no, we get in at daylight. And not only did we not get into Louisville, we got into Cincinnati and had to rent a car and drive home. And not only did we have to drive home, they wouldn't rent it to us but just one way, so we had to get up the next morning and take the damn car back. By God, I handled that son of a bitch well. 73 years old and 31 years sober, and that's my solution to life, you know? If you can't make it work, just choke the shit out of it till you kill it, you know? Does that sound familiar? Yeah, go ahead. So deal with the thinking so I don't have to go back to the drinking. Alcohol and drugs were no problem for me in high school. They were no problem for me in college. A little bit of bizarre behavior, but not really that much out of the normal for that particular time. I started medical school in 1958 at the University of Louisville. I was really about to fly apart at the first gross anatomy exam, and one of the upperclassmen came down and gave me a little capsule of Dexamil, I think is what he gave me. He said, "We take this so we can study." So I took that Dexamil, noise stopped, I could focus. In the first semester of my freshman year, I was #1 in a 100-member class. The last semester of my freshman year, I was number 99. I mean, I was making damn good time, but I didn't know where it was I was going, you know, as Father Martin used to say. But this stuff got in me, and it got in me quick, and it got in me hard. I ended up taking it daily, and 2 weeks before graduation my senior year in 1962, I was kicked out of medical school. In an amphetamine rage, I hit one of my professors. They took me to the head of the Department of Psychiatry and the dean of the medical school, and we sat down, and they said, "Burns, what's your trouble? What's your problem?" I said, I take too many drugs. They said, "Do you believe that?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "We can help you." I said, "What are you going to do?" And they said, "We're going to put you in intensive psychiatric therapy." That was the model in the middle 60s. And unfortunately, at least as I'm observing it, unless I'm jaded, we're having a tendency to creep back, and maybe not even creep back, but running in many respects to getting back to some of those same voices in the wilderness that are crying more therapy. You know, they can spell therapy and they got a book. We got spirituality and we can spell it and we got a book for that. But sometimes they just don't seem to see it the way we see it or be able to measure the desperation of an alcoholic or drug addict of my type. But in any event, they put me in intensive psychiatric therapy. I saw 2 psychiatrists a week for 2 years, almost 2 years. One in Nashville, one in Louisville. These were good psychiatrists. I learned a lot from them. They taught me many things that would serve me well in AA. I didn't use any amphetamine. I didn't drink at that time. I didn't use any amphetamine, studied all my books once I went through that incredible 3 to 6 months period of time, and I was ready to go. Went back into medical school, and Al was in training there, as he talks about it, at Old Louisville General Hospital, and I walked back into LGH, and within less than an hour, I was strung out on amphetamine again. I didn't even think about it walking in. And cocaine taught us a lot. Only the people who were at the very apex of the science of medicine at that time really understood the power of cueing or compulsion that with alcohol. But boy, cocaine taught us in a hurry what it would do and how subtle it would be. No, cocaine's not subtle. Let me give you my example. Here's alcoholism driving in and puts a basketball up on the backboard, falls through the net, 2 points, and everybody politely claps. Here comes cocaine, walking in naked with a basketball in each hand, dribbling down the court, gets to the other end, goes up, dunks both basketballs, rips off the backboard, goes out the other end, finger to the crowd, still 2 points, but that's cocaine. Yeah. So anyway, that I didn't know what was happening. I went down to the OBGYN department, walked in, because what we did for women who were pregnant, who were gaining weight, we gave them a water pill, we put them on a low salt diet, and we gave them amphetamine to control their appetite. That's what we did in the 60s. So I knew exactly where it was, hadn't thought about it, went right down to it like a dog chasing a piece of meat, grabbed that amphetamine, and I was high. Sat on the steps of the medical school and thought, what's wrong with me? In this crowd, we know what was wrong. Psychiatry brought me knowledge. Psychiatry brought me knowledge. I'm not against knowledge. AA is not against knowledge, at least in what I've seen. And I got to tell you, everybody in the program I ran in Kentucky, they went into therapy. They did all the stuff they had to do, right on top of going to 3 to 4 meetings a week and doing a whole other group of things they had to do. Psychiatry brought me knowledge. They didn't bring me the spiritual solution. I have watched with the CME track and the AA track. I am not surprised. Our doctors in Kentucky, when we put them into a group that they had to attend for at least 2 to 3 years. They oriented to that group like a fly on manure. But man, they fought AA like they were in a deathlock. Now, I'm talking about the 97% who came in at gunpoint. They were there to save their ass, not their soul. Their whole problem was they were going to lose their license. That's not how I got here. I got here through an incredible ass whipping. Just an incredible ass whipping. My commitment to AA has never even faltered, even when I was angry at things and resentful at things, because the ass whipping was, thank God, supreme. Incomprehensible demoralization is a part of me. I would know loneliness as few do. That's a part of me. I haven't even had to look in the mirror or even remotely consider that I'm anything other than what I am, and that I had any place to go other than where I had gone. But 97% of the doctors who came in Kentucky came in at gunpoint. They oriented to therapy. They're going to orient to CME rather than AA meetings. Dopamine, serotonin. I'm not preaching. I'm not judging. I'm just giving you an observation that comes from years of experience. We give them some science, we might as well poison their fucking water. Because they're going to go, I was going to go to science. I was more comfortable with science. I'd studied science, but I was in a whole new world, and that was a world of spirituality. What is that? What does it mean? What I do? Well, praise God, it has become simple and crystal clear for me. I am absolutely certain that I will not be able to articulate with the clarity that I wish that I could what spirituality is to me and how simple it is. But I can tell you the answer is in the textbook of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if followed in black and white print, the end result is predictable at 100% if you've had your ass whipping. That term comes from my Papa Brady. In the late 30s and the early 40s, when Papa would ride an old one-furrow plow down in western Kentucky with a mule on that plow. And that mule that summer was old Lightning. I'd run along with Papa, and Lightning would be pulling that plow. And I'd pick up a clod and bust Lightning in the butt. He'd kick back at Papa. I was 5 years old. Papa would say, "Burns Mac, don't do that." "Okay, Papa." Go on, bust Lightning again. Kick back at Papa. "Burns Mac, don't do that." Going to bust Lightning in the ass again. Papa went over and got a switch and came over and switched my legs, and I'm standing there crying. I said, "Papa, what's that?" He said, "That's an ass whipping, Burns Mac. Bust that mule one more time, you get another ass whipping." How many of us have to go so far to get the ass whipping we got to get? To be able to become, as I eventually became after 21 years of field training, teachable. Because, man, I knew loneliness as few of us will ever know. And I knew incomprehensible demoralization. I was nothing. The Jesuits are real clear. Humility comes from humiliation. I used to think what an incredibly powerful negative word, but I know today exactly what it means to me. I am zero at that point of contact. I have nothing. The only value that I have left is either in somebody else's eyes or in the eyes of God Almighty, because I have nothing. The second and third step were mine within about 10 seconds. And I watched people mentally masturbate for years trying to get the second and third step. And man, I had that son of a gun in about 10 seconds. Now, the rest of this 31 years has been the evolution of deeper and deeper appreciation and understanding of the second and third step and what is the source of power and how do I access it. Damn, I don't know where that came from. But I thank God for it. And if you've got any sense, so will you. My classmates enabled me. I graduated in 1964. I was in Our Lady of Peace, a mental hospital 4 times, strapped down, IV fluids, straight jackets, padded cells. I might stay off amphetamine 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, always went back, always put me in the hospital. Finally got out and started my practice in 1967. I was still on amphetamine. I was in the doctor's lounge, and the Vietnam War was raging, and I was absolutely pissed off at the Vietnam War, and I'm screaming, let's win or come home, or just not this thing of attrition that we're going through. And one of my friends said, we've listened to this ranting and raving from you for about 6 months. If you don't like the war, go join it. And I thought, well, hell, that's a good idea. So I went out and got in my car and drove to Frankfort, the capital of Kentucky, and joined the Army. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell my practice. I didn't tell anybody. I mean, within about an hour, I was a member of the U.S. Army. I mean, this is the truth. One of my psychiatrists said I suffered from impulsivity. Right. How long did it take you? How much money did that cost me, you know? Joined the Army, came home, got my wife. We went in the Army. I stayed on the amphetamine for a year. Post commander came down and said, are you taking that amphetamine? And I said, yeah. And he said, if you don't quit, we'll court-martial you. I quit. Once he explained it to me, I quit. And during all my drug period, now I wasn't drinking in any of this. This is all straight amphetamine for 12 years. And during my drugging period, if the consequences and the gun got pointed very clearly at me, I could quit. Now, that was not going to be true with alcohol. With alcohol, I got to the point that I couldn't quit. It was impossible to quit. I could not quit. I couldn't even define to you why I couldn't quit. I just couldn't quit. It was a hell of a lot more than addiction, but it was at least that. It was at least that. So I quit taking the amphetamine, taught Sunday school, sang in the choir, came home. Within less than a week, I was back on amphetamine after I'd started my practice in 1989, had a gallbladder attack. They took out my gallbladder, blamed it on the amphetamine partially, and I held hands with the surgeon and the internist, who are still great friends of mine. Grew up in medicine together, and we prayed that I'd quit taking amphetamine. My last amphetamine was 1969. Then I started drinking. First 4 years of my drinking, first 5 years of my drinking really weren't alcoholic. As Chuck said last night, the goose hung high, and that's what it did. It hung high for me. I became a very successful physician, made enough money to be comfortable, and was drinking enough whiskey to have fun. My wife wasn't particularly enthralled with my fun, but it really wasn't as bad as she was sick, because our marriage was born in hell. That's just all there was to it. I mean, she didn't get much, but she was the sister of Attila the Hun. I'm telling you this. I mean, I'm not bullshitting. This was a really crazy woman. I mean, first of all, she married me and I married her, so we were both crazy. And the reason we got married was because she was the first woman I ever slept with, and I was the first man she ever slept with, and our church said if we slept with each other, we had to get married. And I mean, we didn't cross that boundary. We hated each other. We went through a 3-year courtship, despised each other. But we had to get married. And we got married, and we spent 17 years, as I like to say, trying to make chicken salad out of chicken manure, but it just wasn't working, you know. And during that time I was drinking, she got to where she wasn't quite as ugly or quite as mean with my drinking, and everything just looked, everything was cool. Then in 1975, she kicked me out of the house, and that just suited the hell out of me, and I ran, womanized, drank whiskey. I had a white Corvette and a sky blue leisure suit, carried shit. Wait a minute. Don't be judgmental. I mean, this was the 70s. I've got some pictures, and I was pretty friggin' cool. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. A white Corvette with a blue interior and that leisure suit. I carried a case of Chevy Regal Scotch in the trunk of that thing with a sterling silver mint julep cup. For those people who know me, you know this is a true story. I mean, you know this is a true story. And when I got to the party, I walked in with one of that Chevy Regal Scotch by the neck, and I walked in with my sterling silver mint julep cup, and the party was on, you know. You know that, I mean, the goose hung out. I ran, womanized, then I met Casey. And all of my womanizing had been, and I even knew it, was finding me a woman that I wanted to spend my life with. And I went through them and just kind of cleaned them out. No, this one won't, this one will. No, this one can't do it. I'm right on down. My criteria may have sucked, but I knew I had a criteria. And then I met Casey, and I met somebody I didn't think that really existed. Somebody whose heart and whose head and just her whole, everything about this woman was everything that I didn't think anybody ever had. And she still is that to me. On a couple of occasions, on one occasion in particular, I've tried to destroy that marriage. Praise God, and I mean praise God and my wife, it didn't happen that way. And me too, because I was willing to work to get back between the curbs that I'd strayed from so much during that first 10 years when I really didn't have a game plan for living. She was just perfect. She'd watched her mother take care of her daddy because her daddy was bipolar. I'd watch my daddy take care of my mama. And so I started taking care of Casey. She started taking care of me. Our pathology brought us together. Our hearts have kept us together for 31 years. For 31 years, our hearts have kept us together. And we've been willing to work and do what's necessary to make it work. In any event, I met her. We drank together, drink for drink. We sold a pretty wide swath. I had one date with her and moved in with her and her roommate. My brother came over and said to me, "What in the hell are you doing? You're living with two women." And I hadn't thought of it that way, but once I did, I said, "Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?" Yeah. Who thought a little boy from Mayfield could be that successful? No kidding. Yeah, I'm living with two women, and it was great. Then whiskey turned on me. Casey didn't get sick, I did. We moved into our own apartment, still having a great time. And boy, I mean, in the summer of '77, it turned on me. It became survival drinking. I was up to 2 quarts of whiskey a night, told myself I wasn't an alcoholic because I never drank in my office. I had to believe it because there was no way I could quit. There was no way I even really wanted to quit at that time because it was the only thing that held me together. It was gradually quitting working, but at the same time, it stopped the diarrhea and stopped the puking. And even though I couldn't get drunk, I could stop shaking. And I would drink that night and then go in the next day and see my patients. At the end of that drinking, I can start at any time of the day, but I'll start at 11 o'clock in the morning. I had gone to bed that night, and I didn't go to bed. I would just get in a recliner chair and sit there, and Casey would come in crying and say, "Come to bed." And I'd say, "I'm crazy, and I'm going to drive you crazy. Just get away from me. I'm going to drive you crazy." And she would cry and go off to bed, and I would sit there. And I think, if I don't go to sleep, I won't wake up. If I don't wake up, then I won't have to start this day. And if I don't start this day, this pain won't come back. I don't think I went to sleep. I don't think I passed out. I don't know what happened. But I'd get up at about 11 o'clock, take a Valium to stop shaking, run to the hospital or run to the office, see my patients in about 2 hours. I wasn't a doctor. I was a highly trained technician, and I knew that's what I was doing. I really revere being a doctor, and for the right reasons today, I can tell you, always for most of the right reasons. I really, really appreciated and revered being a doctor, and I knew I wasn't a doctor anymore. If you came in, I could listen to your heart, read your EKG, read your chest x-ray, push on your belly, do all of our technical stuff, but if you want to talk to me about your pregnant daughter or your daddy or mother with dementia, that wasn't within my capacity. I was struggling to get home before I went into complete withdrawal. So talking was out of the question. Then I would race home, I'd call, and I'd see my people in the hospital after the real doctors had been through, and then I'd call Casey, and she'd fix my broiled steak and baked potato because I was trying to save my liver. I knew drinking was out of the question, but I thought if I can just eat enough, maybe I won't destroy my liver. And I was starting to look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I mean, I was transiently jaundiced, white stools, yellow stools, sometimes black stools, the whole deal. I gauged my drinking as best I could by the color of my stool as to whether I could drink more, quit drinking, or, I mean, or whether I needed to get a hemoglobin or a hematocrit. I mean, that's just what I did. And Casey was getting crazy because she'd come in there and check my stools with me. You talking about codependency? I'd say, is that really white? And there we'd be, two little children staring at a stool. I mean, I know you didn't want me to tell them that, did you, Case? But I mean, I'm trying my best to get her rigorously honest as she presents her information. Anyway. So that morning she'd gone, and I would sit down after I got home, eat my broiled steak, baked potato, put on my first record of the evening, which was the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, the Philadelphia Philharmonic Orchestra doing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of. I'd just cry. I still cry. It's a great song, done well. My next record was Neil Diamond's I Am, I Said. I put on, and now Neil's my great hero, and he had a real problem in the 70s. I mean, he really did, but his best record was... he says in that record, I've got an emptiness deep inside and he won't let me go. I'm not a man who liked to swear, but I never cared for the sound of being alone. At least this alcoholic's lament. So I would play those and play them and then go into that scenario I just started with. That morning, Casey had gone to work and I got up and I knew it was over. And I pray for each and every one of us that haven't had it, that day comes when you are absolutely 100% certain it's over. Some people call it a moment of clarity. That wasn't what it was for me. I guess it was, but I knew it was over. I didn't know what to do about it. I'd had 9 years of psychiatric therapy. I'd been deacon in 5 churches, and I'd never heard of AA, but it was over. And I knew it. I asked God to help me and knew immediately what I had to do, and I went into my bedroom, got my 12-gauge shotgun, and put it in my mouth because I was going home. I believed in God. God lived on a cloud, looked like Charlton Heston, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and Santa Claus. That's who God was. But I believed in God. I had faith. I did not know how to bring that power into me because that concept was something I never thought about. How does this power come into me? I did not know that my problem was lack of power because I believed. I had faith. You know what the textbook taught me about faith? Read and I'll send you there. In Working with Others, there's a great line, a great paragraph in there where Wilson is writing about working with someone who's probably a preacher. He doesn't call him a preacher, but he's working with someone who has intimate and extensive knowledge of religious doctrine. And this person's wondering how you can stay sober and he can't. And then Wilson says, and I love this, that faith alone, he may be an example that faith alone is insufficient. Woo! When I read it, I didn't go woo. I went, thank God, I've been looking for this forever. I just need a game plan. It says faith alone is insufficient. It must be followed by self-sacrifice. Steps 1, 2, and 3. And unselfish constructive action. 4 through 12. Faith without works is dead. Right in our book, right out of the book of James, the Gospel of James. Smitty, Dr. Bob's son, I traveled around and talked for a number of years where I was on the Sawdust Trail. I've been asked to get off the Sawdust Trail because I really began to believe that maybe my head did glow in the dark, but nevertheless, I knew I was in trouble when somebody walked up to me and said, while you were talking, you came up off the ground and your head glowed. And I thought, I wonder if that shit really happened, you know? And I told a couple of my friends, they said, that's it, you stay home. I was really ready to come home anyway. But during the time I ran around and did all that, I'd run across Smitty 4 or 5 times a year, and I'd always set him down and pick his brain. What went on in Akron when Bill was there with you and your mom? And he would tell me these stories. And I'd say, I'd come down in the morning, Burns, and if you've ever been in their house, you walk in, it's a modest home, living room, full dining room, little columns here, kitchen back here, steps that go up in the back. He said, I would come down those steps, and there'd be over in that little dining room area, Burns said, Mama would be sitting at the dining room table. Bill would usually be sitting with his back up next to the wall, and Daddy'd be sitting with his back up against one of the chair legs, and Mama would be reading to him from the Bible. And he said most of the time, Mama read to him from the book of James and Paul's letter to the Corinthians on love. And if you make that trip, you'll see, if it's still there, the Bible opened to the book of James. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. Self-sacrifice. That doesn't mean I'm going to Bolivia. Maybe I am going to go to Bolivia. Maybe I'm going to be a medical missionary on the friggin' moon. I don't know what it's going to mean. They better hurry if they're going to get my butt up there, but I'm kidding. But the fact of the matter is, self-sacrifice, I've come to know, is just that, the sacrifice of self. Mark saw me go into self this time here when I jumped on his ass for no reason other than there was just somebody around I could jump on their ass, and it just seemed like a good thing to do at the time. The sacrifice of self. Where is the power? Where is the work? Balance today? It doesn't mean whether I go to church or AA to me. It doesn't mean whether I run with straight people sometimes and alcoholics sometimes. It's the balance between God's power and my work. Because I've lived a number of years with just me doing the drill, even within the steps, and find how empty it could feel when I just felt completely dragged out at the end of the day because I had no power. I had expended it all from me. Faith without works is dead. Oh, I had faith. I had no way to get the power. And at that moment of complete self-absorption, I'm sitting there with that shotgun, and because that's what suicide is to me. For me, I'm just talking about me. It is complete self-absorption. I have the power. The power has been devastated. I have nothing. And I'm sitting there saying, God, if you don't want me to pull this trigger, give me a reason. Casey will be better off without me. Mom and Dad will be better off without me. My patients will be better off without me. And I got to my babies, 12 and 5. I'm not a Norman Rockwell father or grandfather I've wanted to be. It just doesn't seem to be in me. I have to work my ass off at it. And even then, maybe as good as I can do, hopefully it'll get better. But I did have a sense of dignity about my babies. And I'd had enough patients come in to see me who had been impaled on that spear of what had they done that somebody committed suicide. Why did daddy, mother, brother, sister, aunt, whatever. And if I pulled that trigger, those babies would spend the rest of their life. Why didn't daddy love us enough? And at that moment of complete self-absorption, and it was years later looking after a spiritual awakening that I looked back and saw the spiritual experience of that moment. I asked God to give me a reason not to pull that trigger, and He had me think of another human being. He had me think of another human being. All of a sudden, their pain meant more to me than the loss of mine. Their pain meant more to me than the loss of mine. And up until that time, I lived a life of trying to be absent from pain at all costs. Didn't know it. Years later, it would become apparent to me in the book, 10 or 11 years later, that our primary purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and our fellow man. That's why I'm here. This isn't about me. It's about what I can do for you and how much I'll let you do with me. It's all there. One day at a time. Establishing and maintaining a fit spiritual condition. Step 11, step 3, step 7, step 3 to start my day. Looking at love and tolerance in the morning. 10th step to live my day, and the 11th step to close my day at night. I tell you, I walk in the heavens when I do that. That's the spiritual discipline talked about in the 11th step for me. That's the spiritual discipline. There's a wonderful line also that's in the family afterward. I think it's where it is. It says, those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually recognized the childishness of it. This has been replaced by a great sense of purpose and a knowledge that God lives in us, or in essence, a great sense of purpose. What is my purpose? What is Graham's purpose? What is Kevin's purpose? What's Jimmy's purpose? to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to each other, to walk an old lady across the street, or in my case, let some young Boy Scout walk me across the street. That's what it's all about. And my God revealed it to me at that time. Give me a reason. He gave it to me in bold type. I laid the gun down. The terror came back. Went to see a first God of my understanding who was 5'9", wore glasses and stuttered and was a psychiatrist. Said, my life is yours. Do with it what you want. That's exactly what I said. He sent me to treatment. They sent me to New York. They detoxed me, sent me to Atlanta. I spent 3 months in Atlanta. They wanted me to spend another month. I told them no, I was going home. Every effort was made to keep me in treatment. Finally talked to one of the people who was there, and I said, do you think it's okay if I go home? He said, it doesn't make any difference whether it's okay or not. You're going to go home. Ain't no sense in arguing with you. I said, do you think I can stay sober? He said, if you do what we've taught you to do. He said, I said, what would staying here do for me? And he said, well, one day you'll probably learn what it'll do for you. It took me years to realize that I took over and managed my life. I don't know if I'd have learned another damn thing in 1 month. But years later, I was to learn that if I try to run my life in conflict with my support system and the people who love me, invariably I have crapped in the wrong corner. And I'm honest to God about to get it. I'm just there. I looked in the mirror the other day and I was shaving and I thought, I almost started crying. I thought, son of a bitch, I'm a grown-up. Gordy says, no, you're not. Closer, closer, a little closer. Went to treatment, came home. Best of times and worst of times is the best times because the fellowship was indescribably wonderful. Thank God for it. That first 2 years, which is the post-acute withdrawal, is what Wilson said when he said for a year and a half he couldn't get a job. He was racked with waves of self-pity and resentment. He was describing it long before it was written. He described it in 38. It was written in 79. I had all of that going on. Short-term memory shot. I could practice medicine. I couldn't find my car in the parking lot. I could read the Courier Journal and couldn't remember what I read. There was nobody around except AA to tell me the truth. Saw a psychiatrist on Thursday and Tuesday. Went in on that Thursday, where you want me to go? Go back to where we were on Tuesday. I don't remember where we were. You're blocking your therapy. I'm a piece of crap. I'm blocking my therapy. Went into AA meeting. I got a problem. I got a problem. What's your problem? I'm blocking my therapy. So they were kind to me, and I told them the story, and one of the old-timers said, son, do you remember where his office is? And I said, yeah. And he said, for 2 years, that's as good as it's going to get, so don't worry about it. I mean, y'all may think I'm lying about all this shit, but it's exactly what happened to me. I mean, and that's what it was. It was the worst of times, and I mean, there were 5 of us guys who got just like that with our wives. It wasn't 30 minutes early, 30 minutes late. It was 24/7. We ran together, called together, loved together, hugged together, cooked out with each other on weekends, played golf together. We were inseparable. 3 are dead, 2 are alive. We're both walking on banana peels, but we're all sober. We're all sober. What an incredible fellowship. Worst of times because we didn't read the book, we didn't do the steps, we just hung. God, what a wonderful thing. But we were all nuts. Finally got into the steps because I damn near destroyed my marriage at 10 years sober. Fortunately, I sat with Casey and my first sponsor. Actually, what happened is I went and told my sponsor I was thinking about having an affair. He told me not to do it. I said, okay, and by the time I got home, he'd called Casey and told her. Now, there's a take-home message on this. First thing, sponsors aren't God. I made my first sponsor God. And I want to tell you, only the ass whipping kept me from getting drunk at that time and the years in the fellowship because I was completely bewildered. The man who had run my life for 10 years had turned on me in a very radical fashion. I look at it today and see what an incredible gift of God he was in my life, both coming in and going out. and going out because God knew it was time for me to grow up. I had a surrogate daddy who just made decisions for me for 10 years. I would practice medicine, had a high profile in the community, all over the recovering field, but I mean, with him, he was my surrogate daddy, and he made my decision. At that time, I asked God to help me because he wasn't there to solve my problems. A little sponsee of mine came up with 8 tapes. They were Joe and Charlie's tapes of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I listened to those tapes, had 11 copies made, and 12 of us got together and studied our book and listened to those tapes. It's the second big book study that Louisville, Kentucky ever had in 1987. Today, there are 40 or 50 going on at all times. Some of them good, some of them bad. All of them better than none at all. All of them better than none at all. And the whole flavor for alcoholism and recovery and AA in Louisville has changed as a result of those events that occurred in my life, and I know that. I said, God, why in the hell did you do this to me? You could have changed all this. And I felt his voice say, son, you may impress a lot of people with what you know, but you'll help heal a lot of people with your experience. Tell them what it's like to live for 10 years on 3 steps, and then tell them what it's like to live for 21 years on 12 steps. Tell them the difference. Tell them about sanity and spirituality and love and tolerance. Tell them about it. Let them make their choice, but tell them about it. You're listening to a pretty straightforward, sane, enjoyable, happy man. For the first 10 years, you didn't want to be around me unless you just felt like you couldn't be around any other people. I wasn't a prick. I just was a 12 years old screaming in the dark. That's exactly what I was. The answer for all these problems is spiritual. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, the spiritual discipline. As alcoholics, we are undisciplined. We allow God to discipline us in this way. That's the 11th step. And I've come to know a way of living which is indescribably wonderful. About 8 years ago, I began to wonder if I would ever know peace. I was still equating peace with that first drink when it worked. I thought it meant the absence of all of that noise. I knew I felt fine. I went to see a psychiatrist. Casey went with me, and the therapist went with me. There's a good friend of mine. And they said, we don't know what's the trouble with you. From what you're describing, maybe you just haven't stepped off on the shore. I thought, they said, we don't know of anybody who works a better program. We don't know what to tell you. So I thought, I'm going to study Bill Wilson. I thought, here's a man that was one of the most wounded people on earth. What was his journey? Because this was a very confused man most of the time. Very wounded man. His woundedness had made him of value. I thought, what is it went on? So I began to study Bill Wilson and AA subsequently. Lovely journey. I'd recommend it. And I found my answer. In 1940, Ed Dowling, Jesuit priest, came to see Wilson in the 24th Street Clubhouse in November 1940. He comes to see him because he read the big book, and he said, these 12 steps are the distillation of all the Ignatian spiritual exercises. Where did this man get this? And he actually came to see him. And he was once again an act of God, at least as I see it, because Dowling became the man for Wilson from 1940 to 1960. He was his gyroscope to reality. He kept Wilson tethered down when Wilson would get ready to go off into the smoke like he had a tendency to do. So he got there, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. Wilson's laying up on the bed in one of his hypochondriacal fits. And let me tell you, I love Bill Wilson, but that's because I relate to him. I've been a hypochondriac since I was 7. And Wilson was an extreme hypochondriac, and he's laying on the bed thinking he's bleeding to death from an ulcer. Lois is gone. Remember, between 1939 and between 1939 and 1941, Bill Wilson and Lois lived in 52 different places. They had no money. They had no home. And Wilson's up there. They got a caretaker, first clubhouse. Dowling gets there. The caretaker comes up and said, Bill, there's somebody here to see you. And Bill's response is, oh, God, not another drunk. Remember when you're on your 3rd day of a 5th step with somebody and you think, I think I'd just like to go to sleep and puke. I'm listening to the 3rd day of, I mean, we do it because that's what we do. We think, oh, God, this hurts, you know. But well, you did that? Well, let me tell you what happened when I did that. You know, You go through all that shit, you pray and you get spiritual. So Wilson says, oh God, not another drunk. He said, send him up. So we could hear Dowling tapping down the hall. Dowling, 5'6", shocky white hair, pugsy face. You've seen pictures of him. He's tapping down the hall. He comes into the room. He's got an overcoat on. Wilson stands up, about 6'3" or 6'4", Dowling 5'6". He looks at him and said, take off your overcoat. So he took off his overcoat, and he saw his collar. And immediately he said, let's talk. And they sat down and began to talk, and they fell in love with each other in that 5-hour exchange. And in the middle of it, Wilson says to Dowling, will I ever know peace? Dowling says, no. He said, why? And he said, you've been blessed with divine dissatisfaction. Your seeking will bring so many people home. That's what we are. That's what we are. At least I know I am, and the ones that I know so well, we are seekers. And in many of the people that I've come to revere and want to lay my head in their lap at times, I know there's many times when they really don't seem to know peace. But I'd miss to find peace. Peace is what I feel when I'm sitting with one of the prisoners. And I'm sitting and looking in his eyes, and he's looking in mine, and I see for that split second, the lights come on. Or I'm sitting talking with someone at the homeless shelter, or I'm sitting talking to a doc, or I'm sitting talking to somebody, and I see the lights come on. That's peace for me. Another great conference. I appreciate the privilege of talking with you. I love you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for this morning being here.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.